In this video, I'm going to be talking about what is a Saturn return and what it means for you personally. So, Saturn, first of all, what is Saturn? Saturn is the planet of structure, discipline, being really committed to your goals. It is about the mountain goat who is very willing to climb up that mountain to success. It rules things like tenacity and persistence and not giving up. And it's about taking one step, one foot in front of the other, and having the willingness to commit to a goal. But it can also relate to the limitations and restrictions involved with this. And it also can relate to challenges and obstacles that you have to face or find a way to overcome. Because Saturn is, a malefic planet that brings tests to, and puts things in your way, and puts a sledgehammer in your way if you're not heading on a certain direction that you need to go for your life. And it's about your purpose. It also relates to your purpose and your life lesson in this life on an individual level by the sign and house placement of where it's positioned in your chart. So that's, what it really is. And I may do a whole series of videos on Saturn and the signs and Saturn in the houses, maybe sometime later. This video is just a general video of what the Saturn return means. So, what a Saturn return is, for example, there are other types of returns in astrology, like your solar return, which is, your birthday, but where the sun hits the same degree and minute, I might add, as it is in your natal birth chart. The same goes for the moon, where you have your lunar return every month. You have your Mercury return every year, once or maybe twice, depending upon what sign Mercury goes retrograde in. Then you may have a couple different returns where Mercury passes over 1 degree or passes over that degree one time, and then it retrogrades back over that and then moves forward over that again for the third time. Your Venus return is every year. Your Mars return is every 2 years. Your Jupiter return is every 12 years. So when you turn 12 years old, or 11, 12 years old, you have your Jupiter return. And then 12 years later, you have it again. And then we're moving down to Saturn now. And I'm not going to go through the rest of the returns with you. But Saturn, coming back to this principle of it representing limits. In the past, the astrologers only looked at Saturn because they did not have the technology and resources to look beyond Saturn to see Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto. Saturn was the limit. Saturn was the boundary. And, in that way, kind of, relates to this, relates to, that kind of characteristic of Saturn. And, Saturn, really is the authority figure. It rules things like authority and governments, especially, parents. It rules the father figure of, Saturn as a taskmaster and, the kind of, if you think about the disciplinarian of getting rewards through hard work, through sacrifice, through taking responsibility, through taking those little steps to better yourself, and things are not getting handed to you and you're not getting spoiled and receiving all these things, because Jupiter is a benefic energy. It's relates to reward and luck and opportunity, expansion, growth, joy, optimism, all those things. That that kind of wisdom, that fun, where you're curious and you're exploring and having this next great adventure, and going this place, doing that thing, and gaining the wisdoms through your life experiences in that way of what brings you luck, what brings you joy. But Saturn is really the hard knocks of you learning the hard lessons over time. It's kind of like wine that takes time to mature and age, or building Rome or building a building. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and step by step, building up brick by brick, and that's sort of the lifelong process of aging and growing and evolving and maturing with Saturn. So when you have a Saturn return, your Saturn hits the same degree and minute as it is in your natal birth chart. And so there's also something called a Saturn return chart, just like a Jupiter return chart or a solar return, that will tell you what you're going to be experiencing and what you need to work with based off of the planets and what signs that they're in and the aspects between them, over the course of the next 28 to 30 years, because that's how long Saturn takes to come back around to where it is in your natal chart. And so what makes sense is that your first Saturn return in that case would occur 28 to 30 when you're officially moving into your adulthood. I mean, you turn an adult legally at 18 years old, but you're still probably in school by that time, and then a lot of people go off to college and university. At that time, and it's when you're 28 to 30 that you're settling down with a wife and kids, that you're officially moving into the real responsibilities of adulthood, and it really gets real, of where now you're becoming an adult, and you're done with riding around in a car all over the place, going to this place and that place, having fun in your 20s and all those kind of things. Now it's time to get to work and get serious, because Saturn asks you to get serious. Now, I think a great sort of connection with this is in American history, you've had the Roaring Twenties, which was a decade of new innovations and fun, and people spending money, and people living life and enjoying themselves, and let's buy this, and new technologies and parties, and so much. And then the consequences, Saturn, because it rules consequences, either positive or negative, for your actions. Like, what is the karma and what are the results of your actions? Well, that really came to a head on October 29th, 1929, when the stock market crashed and the Great Depression officially set in. And that's very, that's sort of just a analogy, sort of a similarity that I place with that first Saturn return from 28 to 30. So then, about 30 years later, when you're 58 to 60, you move into the next phase. So all these are, if you could make a timeline, and if you could make all these stages of development, that's what the Saturn sort of cycle is, your stages of development based off of, the Saturnian themes, which we sort of touched on here a little bit in this video already. So your second Saturn return happens between the ages of 28 through, or excuse me, 58 to 60, depending upon when Saturn enters that sign that you have in your natal chart again, and when it leaves, and how old you are at that time. So it may happen age 58, 59 through 60, it all depends, but that sort of window of time is when that next Saturn return happens. And your third Saturn return can happen, um, ages 88 to 90. So 28 to 30, you're moving into your official adulthood years. Your job, your family, all those kind of things. And that's happening, and then you're reevaluating, your life, and moving forward from there, and then sort of um, getting real about where you want to go from that point on. And then 58 to 60 is it's a time period where you're moving into, retirement is on the horizon. You're moving into your older years, settling down, doing the things that you wanted to do when, or wish that you would have done, when you were younger. And that's that second, critical time for Saturn, the 88 to 90, when you're about, when it comes time for you to, leave, the earth, depending upon how long you live. Then that's a time of, more surrender, and that's also really, significant too. And, Saturn really doesn't leave you. It sticks around for the long haul. It sticks around for all, your whole entire life. And the Saturn returns are designed and set up to mark critical stage changes, and phase changes, critical phase changes in your life, that are designed to, for the last one to be the very end. And what I find interesting is, the older you get, the better you are, the easier it becomes. The Saturn themes. And, what's interesting to me is that the first Saturn return happens 28 to 30 and not 18 to 20. I find that very interesting, that it takes 10 years later to occur when you're 10 years into your adulthood, and then it happens. I find that really interesting. But, so anyway, you want to look to your Saturn return chart, and you also want to consider your natal Saturn position, the placement that it's in, the sign that it's in, the degree, and also the minute. So, for example, in my chart, I have Saturn in Cancer at 7 degrees, 5 minutes. So when Saturn hits that point again, I believe 2033 is when it's going to do that. And that's when I would be having my Saturn return. And the house placement, the life area of where that's, that Saturn in that sign, and all those themes and qualities and those lessons and aspects of the Saturn placement, where is it going to show up in your life? In what area of your life? That's your house placement. So in your fourth house, it could be in your, emotional foundations, family, your home environment. In your third house, it could be about your showing up in your community, your neighbors, close circle of friends, your siblings. Third house, primary education, the whole grade school, system, from, first grade to 12th grade, even though you're way out of that by the first time you have your Saturn return. But it also deals with communication, information, connecting with people, speaking, writing, thinking, all those kinds of things with your third house. So it really depends upon your placement, your sign placement and house placement. And I'm not going to go into the sign of Saturn and these signs and Saturn in this sign, for example, and what your Saturn return means, Saturn in the houses and what it means based off of what house placement your Saturn is in your natal chart, or what sign Saturn is in your natal chart. I'm not going to go through that in this video. This is just what a Saturn return is about. There's other videos for that, and I may do a separate video or separate videos about the Saturn return in the sign and in the house. And I may get into that on maybe a series of videos I may do later on Saturn through the signs and bring in the Saturn return in those videos, and what Saturn return in Cancer means, or Saturn return in Leo means, or does Saturn in the first house means, and when Saturn returns in the first house, what that means. I don't know. I'm not going to really put too much of a plan on that, but anyway. So that, all those factors are important to consider, both the placement, the degree that it's at in your natal chart, and the house placement. So the Saturn return is a slow burn, long process, and you can start to feel it by the time that Saturn first enters that specific sign. So right now, as I'm filming this video, Saturn is in Pisces, and so for the people born between, I want to say, 1935 to 1937, 1964 to 1966, 1994 to 1996, you're going to be feeling that at one point in the Saturn cycle in Pisces, the Saturn transit in Pisces from March 7th of 2023 all the way through February 12th, 2026, March 7th, 2023 through May 24th, 2025, and then Saturn is going to move into Aries until August 31st, 2025. Starting September 1st, 2025, Saturn will be back in Pisces again for the final time, and then February 12th, 2026, that's the last day, February 12th, 2026, that is the last day of Saturn in Pisces. February 13th, 2026, Saturn's going to move into Aries officially, full time. And I have another video on Saturn in Pisces. You can check it out on my YouTube channel. And last weekend, last Saturday, a week ago from when I'm filming this video, that video premiered on my YouTube channel. You can check it out. That's a huge, and profound video that I did, which was really long and in depth. But anyway, so those people born in the years that I listed, so 1935 to 37, 64 to 66, 94 to 96, you're going to be feeling the Saturn return, especially when it hits that same degree point, that same degree in house placement in your natal chart, but also starting now when Saturn enters the sign that it is in your natal chart. From the very beginning of that transit to the end of it, you're going to be feeling it. And so, as I said, Saturn returns mark the different stages of development every 28 to 30 years. And I listed when the Saturn returns happen already. And so Saturn returns can be a time when we're going through the school of hard knocks, where we're learning those hard lessons. And if you remember Annie, the song "It's a Hard Knocks Life," that kind of thing. of it not being easy, it being challenging, and you having to go through these, these trials and tribulations, and reach these milestones, and accomplish these tasks, and rise above these obstacles, and do this kind of work. With Saturn, I think of, maybe on the downside, Scrooge and the Christmas Carol being stuck at school over the Christmas holidays, or, a school building even during the, Christmas holidays, or, just school in general, of that whole top-down structure imposed system where you sort of have to stay in line, do what you need to do, be efficient, be on task, follow the rules, work hard, get the grades, and you'll get rewarded with good grades or bad grades when you are in school. And so the Saturn return can be a time where you are metaphorically getting graded for how what you've done, and how you've grown in your life, and what the past 30 years, 28 to 30 years have been in your life. And what you have done, if you worked hard, if you've done what you need to do, you've lived according to your own values, you're responsible, all those kind of things. And at 14 years old, you have what's called a Saturn opposition, where Saturn is exactly opposite your sign, degree, and house that it is in your natal birth chart. So that can happen at that time. And so, that can happen as well with this. And there was an astrology, the very first astrologer, and she's also a psychotherapist that I have watched and followed. Deborah Silverman, she had a metaphor for the Saturn return as you going into the principal's office and having a conversation with the principal to evaluate and reevaluate how far you've come in your life, and are you on task, are you fulfilling your purpose, all those kinds of things. And the Saturn return can be a reality check time, where you're realizing what you've done and where do you need to go from here, and where do you want to go from here, from this point. And Saturn returns can be endings, but they can also be beginnings, as well. And so it's again about looking at your life, how far you've come. Do you like your life, and where do you want to go with it? It's about getting very real and honest about that. It's time to take responsibility. It's really when you have your Saturn return, when Saturn enters the sign that it is in your natal chart, and especially when it enters into that degree and that house placement in your natal chart. That is the time when you want to take so much responsibility, maybe all or most of the responsibility, and you really want to take the reins of your life and be in your power, and not be a victim to your life, and show up for yourself, and lead your life, and work hard for what you want, because it is about working hard, and it's about being willing to do the hard work. Those are very Saturnian themes. It's about setting structures in place, setting in place the structures, mentally and emotionally, of how you want to achieve your goals, especially long-term goals, because Saturn deals with the long term. So setting those structures in place, getting really real about the structures, It's about being accountable, taking action, and actually manifesting your dreams. It's about taking responsibility for your actions, your words. And it's about manifesting your dreams, of taking a dream and putting it into reality and working hard to achieve that dream and to achieve that goal that you have. It's time to, really get real and manifest those dreams and not keep putting it off and slacking on, but it is about working hard, having integrity, putting in 100%, maybe even 1,000% effort into those dreams, not giving up, and achieving excellence and putting the high quality effort into achieving those dreams, much like all those really, great people like, Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, and even those athletes who have their goals and what they've achieved, and the hard work and the discipline and the time and energy that they would, that they put into their dreams. And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't just happen on the snap of their fingers. It wasn't easy. It was difficult. Um, and it tested them, but all that work was fulfilling and it was worth it in the end. It's about sort of you reap what you sow. That's very Saturnian as well. And it's about the results of your actions, climbing the mountain to success. Evaluating where you want to go, facing the reality of what has been. It is a time of surrender and self-acceptance as well, where you're facing what has come before and you're really getting honest about what you regret, of what you have not done enough of, and what you wish you would have done more of. And it's time to say, okay, well, that was the past. I have no power in the past, but now I can face the reality and be in the present moment and then see where I want to go from here and take those steps to do what I've always wanted to do and live into my values and do what I need and, fulfill my goals. And I may look back on this video going, when I say that, that may be easier said than done. And when I get to that 28 to 30 time period, when I have my Saturn return, I may, look back and say, well, back then I said that and it was so easy, but now I'm really feeling it. It's really difficult. But I will be sure by that time, that I will be prepared for that, evaluation and, that whole thing. And it's good to be aware of the Saturn return and what it is, so that, depends upon when your next Saturn return is, or, when it's coming up, or how far down the road it is. So this is a good video to watch anytime, particularly if you are in your Saturn return or approaching your Saturn return. And I hope that you're finding value and insightful information from this video. And I hope that you find that anytime, no matter when, at what stage and time in your life that you watch this video. It's about facing the reality, surrendering what has come before, and getting honest with yourself about what has come before. And sitting with that and feeling that. And, so that's huge. And it's also a time where you cultivate wisdom and maturity, where you grow, because it's ultimately about growth, and it's ultimately about maturity as well. Of maturing, of starting young and then slowly maturity. It's about being an adult. And you have your Saturn returns throughout your entire process of being an adult. You don't have your Saturn return when you are a child or adolescent. You are officially an adult. So it is about adulting, and it's about responsibility and picking up your bootstraps and doing it. And it's about doing the hard work, putting in the hard work. And I think what Charles Dickens did not know about his book, Great Expectations, was that not only was it a book, but it also was, um, a metaphor for the stages of development. As in the story, if you've ever read Great Expectations and you know the story of it, it shows the life of Pip, especially in his 20s. And at one point in that story, I'm sure that he experienced a Saturn return. And it shows um, just, that stage of, being a blacksmith and doing all of this, and then moving to London and becoming a man and meeting a benefactor. And And so, that time, it's as if in the story when, if you've ever read the story, there was a banker that came into, I think, a lawyer or somebody like that who came into Pip's life and said, you will, get to encounter a mysterious benefactor, and you're, forbidden from knowing the identity and who this is. Yet probably he had his first Saturn return, and then found out about the benefactor at that time. But the whole thing about Great Expectations is Saturn and those expectations, because it deals with expectations of testing you to, become better and become the best version of yourself that you can be. That whole concept of Great Expectations and that adulting and that, you know, growing and maturing in those stages of development, the Great Expectations, model, I want to say, ties into the whole Saturn cycle, particularly the Saturn returns that you experience in your life. And, really, your actions are written on the walls. And you can't really take down. It's like somebody wrote all those kind of things. Or, you've done this, you can't really take it back. That's what has happened. That train has already left the station. It's not coming back. And, I sort of have this picture of being in a kind of building, I guess you could say, walking there alone, and sort of feeling that energy of it being, new, and you being an adult and being independent, but it's not really feeling challenging or overwhelming. It feels, you feel an inner grounded sense of, this is where I need to go. This is, what my soul's calling me to move into. This feels right, and I'm ready to move on. Not with the excitement and the enthusiasm per se, necessarily, but the just inner practical grounded sense of, being independent and being an adult. And this is, now I need to change my life, and now I'm changing and growing, and this is where I need to move on from here. And so I picture walking in this building, for instance, alone, and spending some time in reflection and evaluation and reevaluation, on your own and on your own terms in your own life. That's what I really see with this. And so it's also a time where you can evaluate, what impact do you want to make on the world. What do you want to leave this life doing? Of where, when you're 58 to 60, not looking back and, regretting not doing enough or doing these kinds of things. But what impact do you want to make, and, what do you want to work to achieve, that you can feel good about and look back upon when you get to be older? What is, again, how do you want to make a difference in this life, and what is your purpose? Saturn return is a time to really find your purpose. And what is your life lesson, and how you fulfilled it, and how are you on the process, on your pathway of fulfilling it? How are you doing, basically? And living a life of healthy boundaries, too, is another thing, of, living a life according to your own healthy boundaries, of knowing what's right for you, and living according to that, and, taking responsibility, and all these themes I spoke about earlier. It's a time to become stronger and more resilient, where the Saturn return may test your strength, and test your resilience. Yeah, it's not a time to fall into victimhood and being weak. It's about stretching yourself and pushing yourself to whom you can become, and becoming better as a person. And yeah, and so coming away with so much time. Your Saturn return, you're coming away with that, becoming stronger. And yeah, so improving your life and putting more quality into what you're doing. Really, what do you want? What do you need? And really focusing and putting in the hard work and the care and the time and dedication into what you want to achieve. Understanding the limitations of yourself, of where you're powerful, of where you're powerless. The whole serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference, that whole thing. And so where are you not being courageous and taking action and taking a healthy risk? But it also is a time, on the contrary, where you want to follow the rules, be obedient, be by the book, and set those healthy boundaries and structures. And time, of realizing that time is not infinite, that there are limits to time. And it's about making the most of that time, and using your time wisely, and knowing that can make a difference. How do you want to take the most advantage of your life and live the most fulfilling and sacred life that you can, of where you achieve something, of where you grew, of where you were happy, of where you expanded in a lot of ways, and achieved a lot, and those kinds of things like that. And humility and self-improvement, of being humble, enough to face your flaws, and acknowledge your flaws, and knowing that you're not, of wisdom, as part of it is, you're very smart and intelligent and wise, I guess you could say. But another part of wisdom is it's okay not to know. It's okay to lead with curiosity, and a beginner's mind, I guess you could say, getting into a beginner's mind, but sort of letting things unfold, and it's okay not to have all the answers, and to continue to be, continue to grow and evolve, and being your own inner teacher and inner authority as well. And the best teacher is a continual, lifelong learner. And the best teacher really teaches you how to be your own inner teacher. And Saturn is the ultimate master and teacher, in astrology. And it's also the master builder as well, of materializing what you desire and what you want to achieve. And it's about self-improvement too, of taking conscious steps to improve yourself. We're not talking about perfectionism here. We're talking about self-improvement, because there is a difference between perfectionism and self-improvement, about being humble enough that while you are enough, both and where could you grow and experience more and do more and expand more, become better in a way. So it's a test also to see how great you can become. And it can also be facing the unknown. Facing the unknown is a new idea. And this can be a difficult time, a time of struggle. You could be feeling depressed and down in the dumps, and especially that guilt and regret. And it's a very serious and sobering time. And I don't mean that in terms of alcohol, but I mean that in terms of another kind of context. Um, serious. Your time to be very serious and not cutting corners, and actually putting in the hard work. I'm not taking those kind of shortcuts. And growth really happens through challenges, because it isn't easy. Who said that it was going to be easy? As Saturn is here to teach you about challenges, and here to, it's like the benefic but opposite represents these challenges for you to again grow and rise up, rise above those challenges, and then Saturn will ease its challenges, on you the more you rise above one challenge to the next. And so if everything was easy, then where would the growth be, really? And so karma, of seeing, what you've done and facing that. And maybe relieving the pressure off yourself if you have been putting pressure on yourself. Two is another thing. Being true to yourself and keeping your promises, making a commitment to yourself. You're going to say you're going to do this, and actually do it and commit to it. And full throttle, all in, really. So that's sort of the themes and energy of this Saturn return. This is what it is about. I hope that you found this video really informative and in depth. I hope that this was a lot of information. It provided you a lot of information for you. I hope this was helpful, and I hope that you enjoyed this. Bye for now, everybody.